So someone asked me to do a paint up tutorial on one of these droid arms. So here's the red arm. This is just a really simple paint job. Red, black wash coat. I'm going to do this one a little bit different. I'm going to go with a really aged, super kind of melted down, rusty, looks like it's been sitting outside corroding for 50 years paint job. And so for this, I'm going to show you how to do this little detail here that's on the inside of the elbow. It's going to be just a little rubber sleeve that goes in there. And then we'll do a little bit of airbrushing to accentuate some of these shapes. I'm going to go with a rust pattern, and we are going to do it. First thing you want to do before you start any kind of painting on this is disassemble the arm. These pistons come off pretty easy. Set these guys off to the side. I want my base rust color to be pretty bright. So I know it seems really silly, but I am going to give this a yellow base coat. This will make more sense once we go a little bit further. Now that we have our base coat, we are going to mix some rust colors. We're going to be using yellow, orange. I've got a little bit of this mustard yellow color. Old paint. And some brown. And we're going to want to have a little bit of white so we can control the colors a little bit. You also want to have a little container of water standing by. And we're just going to mix these colors and get different tones of rust. So we don't want any part of this arm to be one single color. It's going to be just a mix of different colors. So what I'm doing is I'm just dipping in to my palette and I'm just picking up some different colors, staying away from the brown and mostly kind of sticking to the yellow and the orange. And I just want this mottled look. So I'm going to come in here and touch a couple bristles to the brown, get some dark tone going on. Let's go into this straight yellow. And we're just going to go back and forth and get this rich rust mottled up color. The next thing I'm doing is I'm going to give this a little bit of color breakup. We're going to go dark tones and then light highlights before we move on to the masking stage. I'm using a little piece of torn out sponge, and I'm just going to randomly apply a little bit of dark color. I've given that dark color just a little bit of time to dry. And before I go on, this sponge, you're going to get a better random pattern if you don't use just a flat sponge. Just tear it up. This is just a kitchen sponge. That's all I had on hand right now. But I'm just tearing little pieces out of it. And that is going to give you this kind of broken up surface. So we're going to come in, we're going to mix just a little bit of this. I'm going to dip into the middle of that and just randomly get some of this highlight. Make sure it's random. A little bit of orange. Maybe a little bit of straight yellow. Now I want to show you a trick. It's a chip brush that I just trimmed down, so I've got these little bristle nubs. I'm going to go ahead and break this color up one more time using orange paint. the same base we've been using to create this rust color. I'm going to water it down a bit. And I'm just going to create this really loose paint. And I'm going to flick this color onto the surface like this. And I know the lighting isn't very good. Let's see if I can do it over here. Let's do this spot right here. So I'm just going to flick. And that's going to randomly put little spots of color onto that surface. So this breaks it up even one more level. A little more water, a little more paint, and just flick it. Before we start masking this, I'm going to use matte clear. This will protect all of that beautiful color breakup, because we'll be coming in here with water paints a little bit later. And you want to get this protected. This is insurance that you're not going to rub off this color. So this, so far, is just the undercoat. This is the rust layer that's going to be showing through the top coat of paint we put on. So to mask this, you could use latex. I'm using some quick set silicone rubber. This is a smooth-on product. And I'm just going to determine where the rust is going through. So anywhere I'm putting this rubber on is where that rust is going to be poking through the top coat paint. So I'm just going to do this randomly. I want some kind of big patches to show through. Anywhere that I really like the color of the rust and the texture, I'm going to cover that. And then just randomly, just little spots and big patches. Our top coat is going to be Rust-Oleum Satin Shell White. You can use any color you'd like. I think this would look really interesting just being sort of like a green color or something, but I'm just going to go with this white. Spray right over everything. Okay, the top coat is dry. And now is the moment of truth. We are going to rub off our silicone masking and see what we have. Wow, that is really looking cool. To get the remaining masking off of these parts, I'm just using a regular old toothbrush. And just scrubbing it to get rid of all that masking. What I'm going to do now is accentuate some of these lines. I'm going to make some of this detail, this high detail, pop out a little bit more. So I'm going to grab something that's a little bit flexible and very lightly go over these contour lines. I've got a really fine setting on this airbrush right now, so I can get some really nice fine lines. So that's what I'm doing here. It's just giving it a little pop. On the inside and the outside. So you can see that kind of makes this whole thing sort of pop out a little bit more. And then in here, just give this a little bit of grind. Same thing on this guy here. Alright, let me show you in a little more detail what I'm doing. Oh, thanks, by the way, to Randy Newbert for this airbrush. I'm going to open up this a little bit. So I'm doing these lines like this. So I'm going to come in here and do this line. I'm going to do this line over here. Just make that high detail pop out. There. Just make it jump out a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing for these pistons. Is bury some of these lines in dark. Just give them a little bit of weathering, a little shading. See, right in here, this benefits from having a little bit of airbrush dark in there. Expose it, and then kind of stand back and give the whole thing a little bit of a wash. Same thing over here. Kind of filter it a little bit. I'm going to leave this piston pretty bright. Just going to give it just a little bit like this. There, so if you see the difference between airbrushed and not, it's pretty dramatic. Now before we close this up for final assembly, there's a gap inside the elbow if you don't do anything to seal that up. So I'm going to use a piece of this ribbed rubber. This is actually floor mat. I think I found this at either Lowe's or Home Depot. It's like a stair grip material. So I just cut out a little rectangle of it, and I'm going to glue it into the elbow at about this angle. Hold this so you can see it. So it'll be glued in here like this. The other thing I'm going to do before I assemble this up is I want to create a little enclosure right here, a little table, because I'm going to put a bunch of wires and just a bunch of like doodads and mechanics kind of popping out of this. So I need to build something to mount that to. So I'm going to do a real quick, here so you can see it, just a rough outline of the opening traced onto styrene. I'm going to cut this guy out and trim it to fit inside that arm. And I'll paint that black, and now we've got a shelf to mount our wires. This droid unfortunately met a very violent end, so I'm gonna use some of this stuff. This just comes out of old cars. Occasionally I'll go down to the junkyard, and while I'm there I'll just pick up some old scraps and old wiring harnesses and just cut them off, and they're really cheap at junkyards. I've got a big box of these. So what I'm gonna do is probably just use screws. This is a nice meaty piece, so like this. I'll probably get this big fat end right here, and you can glue this on here, but I'm actually going to screw this stuff on here. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. I just popped these pistons on. If you didn't see my other tutorial on building this robot arm, you'll see a little bit more detail about how these pistons assemble and attach at these points. But there we are. This is detailed out with junkyard parts and scraps. This looks really super realistic. I've got the hand detailed with wiring. Fairly lightweight piece. Interesting paint job. This is definitely a first for me to do this combination of the rust color and then the top coat of a lighter color. I think it works. I mean, I think this would look really cool on a shelf somewhere, or just in a garage up on the corner. It'd be a conversation starter. It looks like it's functional with all of this. I mean, we have all these linkages and all of this finery in here. So there it is. There is how to paint and detail different style robot arm. I hope you enjoyed watching the tutorial.